So Beryl Wine passed away just a short while ago, and he was a very, very special person that I did not know personally, but had a tremendous impact on me in his writings and other special productions that he was involved in. But tonight I want to begin with a story that's not about him, but with something that he said about his father-in-law. It's a fascinating, fascinating story that I haven't heard before. And what we're going to try to do is understand what this story tells us in our Avodas Hashem. His father-in-law's name was Rav Levine. Rav Levine was a Talmid for an extended period of time in the Chafetz Chaim's yeshiva in Radin. And in that yeshiva in Radin, Rav Levine saw some very fascinating things about the Chafetz Chaim. And there's a story that Rabbi Wein would recount that he essentially said was a politically incorrect story, but an important one nevertheless. And we're going to have to take this startling story and put it into context, and that's going to be our message as we begin Mirz Hashem Zman. Story goes as follows. It was Tzom Gedalia. There are details here in the story. It was Tzom Gedalia. It was after a long davening. The boys were fasting, and the Chafetz Chaim was essentially the one who had the last word in the yeshiva of Radin, but he was not involved too much. He did not say a shir in the yeshiva. He did not speak often in the yeshiva. He would daven there. And strikingly, one Tzom Gedalia, the Chafetz Chaim got up and made an announcement right after davening, as the boys were still in their tefillin, and he began to decry and in a very painful way describe that one of the mikvaos that was not too far away from Radin at all was in disrepair in one of the towns that was nearby. And the Chafetz Chaim claimed that people were using the mikvah, and the mikvah was pasul, and no one there was volunteering to fix the mikvah, and they needed a certain amount of money. And the Chafetz Chaim was clearly pained by that phenomenon. And he asked for volunteers that there should be boys that should walk on Yom Kippur and make a pledge in his name in that town that they should fix the mikvah, because there are terrible things that are happening because there isn't a mikvah that's kosher in the town. Chafetz Chaim finished, and there was a boy who came over. You can imagine what a schus it would be to ask the Chafetz Chaim a question. So Chafetz Chaim used to be in the front of Radin and answering boys' questions, and Chafetz Chaim finished, and the boys came over to ask the Chafetz Chaim a question. One of the boys came over and discussed with the Chafetz Chaim a Tosas. And he asked the Chafetz Chaim a question, and then the boy had a follow-up question, and the Chafetz Chaim gave him an answer, and they spoke for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, the boy had the schus that he had the Chafetz Chaim's pshat and Tosas. And then the Chafetz Chaim said, and what about my announcement about going to this town? He asked the boy, could you go to the town and speak about the mikvah on Yom Kippur? The boy said to Chafetz Chaim, I don't want to leave yeshiva for Yom Kippur. The Chafetz Chaim's face contorted, and he turned his back to the boy, and he went, Ech feh! And he said, Afeh oif ayer taisis. I find your tosis that I just discussed with you disgusting. And first of all, I really feel bad for that boy, but he made a terrible mistake. And we need to understand what the Chafetz Chaim was saying in that story. Now comes the Torah for tonight. And in Mirz Hashem, we'll come back to the story and then see what the lessons we could take from this are. We're in the middle of Sefer Devarim. In Sefer Devarim, there are some very, very, very powerful psukim. For example, last week's parasha we had Re'ei anochi nosen ifnechem hayom bracha uklala es habracha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very, very poetic. And in Sefer Devarim we have the pasuk uvo sidbach, that you should be davik, you attach yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The goal of Avodas Hashem is to make us davik, to cleave to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In Nefesh HaChaim we discuss, what does it mean to become connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Rabbosai, How many times does the word Deveikus appear in the other 4 Sefarim, in Bereshis, Shmos, Vayikra, and Bamidbar? The answer is 0. How many times do you have the mitzvah of Avas Hashem in the first 4 Sefarim? Hardly any. Yiras Hashem, hardly any. The parsha that we said tonight, Kriyishma V'ahavta, Sefer Devarim. Why? Why is it that the description of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is essentially only in the Mishnah Torah when Moshe Rabbeinu repeats the Torah, and we don't have it in Bereshis Shmos Lech Lecha, Bereshis Shmos Vayikra Bamidbar? Why is it that we only have it in Sefer Devarim? It's a nice kasha, no? Important question. So I heard a beautiful answer from someone who's younger than me, who's a fascinating Talmud Chacham. He came to my shul and he spoke. Rav Meir Steinmetz, Jonah Steinmetz, he's from Los Angeles. He has a kollel in Los Angeles. He gave a beautiful answer, and I'd like to discuss that answer and connect it, b'siyata d'shmaya, to the story. He pointed out that this question of why we don't have certain themes in Avodas Hashem in certain places does not only apply to the theme of Deveikus, but it also applies to Midos in general. The Rishonim are already bothered. We're going to discuss them Yirtzeh Hashem this year. How important it is to address the Aveira of Kas. Why Midos of Chesed are so central and are not just mitzvos, but define who we are. Yet, could you point to me a pasuk in the Torah that says not to get angry? We have a story of Moshe Rabbeinu maybe getting angry. Does the Torah give us mitzvos about midos? The Rishonim point out. The answer is no. So this question that we're asking about how Sefer Devarim works is actually a more fundamental problem that one has to deal with it in general in terms of personal characteristics of an individual, spiritual characteristics of an individual. Where in the Torah does it say they have to be a thoughtful and giving person? There is a nice pasuk again in Sefer Devarim, V'asisa hayasher v'atov, but the mitzvos that relate to midos are not, open up the count of 630 mitzvos. You can't find them. How could that possibly be? So the Rishonim explain that the Torah doesn't necessarily explain the spirit of the mitzvah. The Torah gives us the instructions, and Chazal understood what the effect of the mitzvahs are supposed to be. In other words, the Torah is an instruction manual. The result of those details of the psukim are only understood with Chazal. So it's not only that we need Chazal's interpretation of saying that this is the goal of Nichum Avelim is for you, the mitzvah of Nichum Avelim is for you to become a giving person. Not only does that apply to the way in which we understand mitzvos in general. For example, the Tzedukim said, the Torah says that you're supposed to put the Torah between your eyes, so they put it literally between their eyes. Who told us what between our eyes mean? Chazal. So just like you need Chazal to interpret and define the mitzvahs themselves, on an even deeper level, Chazal tell us the meaning behind this mitzvah. The Zohar will give us one explanation of what the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKein is. The Gemara will give us another explanation of the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKein is. But both of their explanations you won't see in the Torah. The Torah is an instruction manual. After Rav Meir Steinmetz said this, I thought of a mashal that one could bring out. It happened to be that 2 days prior, my wife and I had gone to buy a lamp. And it was a lamp that my wife enjoyed very much, the way the lamp looks. In our house, my wife's at Deveikus, she does all the home repairs as well. So she puts together the lamp after we buy it as well. In fact, I'm not making this up. When we got married, we came back from the store, we bought a tool set, and I opened up the tool set. The tool set said, "Do it herself." That's what happened. In our house, my wife is the handy person. So there are instructions of how to put together a lamp. The instructions of how to put together a lamp, does it describe what a lamp is? If someone from Mars read the instructions of how to put together a lamp, the screw goes over here, the socket is over here, the on button is over here, the off button is over here, would he necessarily know what the joy of reading by light is? The answer is no. Lahavdil, the same thing is in regards to Chazal and the relationship between mitzvahs and the Torah. The mitzvahs and the Torah are the instruction manual. The effect, the result, the meaning, the message, that's Chazal. Beautiful pshat, no? So Eisenstein suggested that what is Mishnah Torah? Mishnah Torah is Moshe Rabbeinu giving over the Torah a second time to Klal Yisrael. No longer is it Hashem's talking, but it's Moshe Rabbeinu's talking. Moshe Rabbeinu is the bridge. Sefer Devarim is the bridge between Torah Shebechsav and Torah Sheba'al Peh. It is Torah Shebechsav, but it's beginning that process. Hence, the goals of the Torah are going to be expressed in Sefer Devarim as opposed to the first four Svarim. Isn't that a beautiful pshat? It's a very, very beautiful pshat. That is the explanation over here. And he brought an amazing raya. It's a halachic raya, Gemara in Yevamos. I'll explain in 2 minutes a beautiful pshat. The Gemara in Yevamos on Daf Daled Amud Aleph seems to say that you could learn a message between two psukim when each pasuk is written next to each other. That's called smuchim. You're learning psachim. You're going to have examples of the Gemara learning a hekesh or a gzeira shava. So, for example, the Gemara is going to learn in regards to burning chametz, whether burning chametz is a lav hanitik laseh or is not a lav hanitik laseh. Those are different drashos of Chazal. When it comes to smuchin, the Gemara in Yevamos says that in general we're not dorish smuchin. But the Mefarish, the Rav Ranjburg writes, then Sefer Devarim, we are dorish smuchin. The question is why? Rav Ranjburg says, because when it's the Dvar Hashem, so then in such a case, the Dvar Hashem is Ein Muktam Muchar B'Torah. But when it's already Moshe Rabbeinu, so then it's already another level where the fact that one pasuk is close to another is going to be significant. The message from this is that we already see that the structure of Torah is different in the first four Chumashim than the last Chumash. The last Chumash is already considered almost a certain level of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Of course, it's Bechsav, but it's a component of Torah Sheba'al Peh versus the first four that are Torah Shebechsav entirely. What's the lesson for tonight? The lesson for tonight is that the goal of all mitzvahs is to create Deveikus. We're not doing simply mitzvahs because Hashem commanded us. We're not just reading the instruction manual. What we need to do is learn to appreciate that which is not in the instruction manual. And that's what Torah Sheba'al Peh is about. That's what your Rabbeim is about. That's what the goal of Sefer Devarim is about. Moshe Rabbeinu is creating the messages that were in that instruction manual. Let's go back to the story now and let's apply it to our lives. Of course, you know what's happening when the Chafetz Chaim is disappointed in his Talmud? The Chafetz Chaim is saying, you worked hard on the Tosas, but you missed the message of the Tosas. You're going to be working for a long time on the Rishonim's Shita of why you have Bedika if you were already Yotzei with Bittul. It's not only the goal of answering that question. The goal of answering that question is not only to have the information that answers the question, but the depth of Torah's understanding, of Torah's intellect in your lives. And to think more and more the way the Chachmei HaMasorah thought. And to spend more and more time thinking about what Chametz means. What does Pesach mean? What does it mean to truly be free? Is truly being free just that in America you could do what you want? Or is freedom something else? All of those things are the messages in Maseches Psachim that are above the mitzvahs, the mitzvah in the Torah that says, Tashbisus armi batechem. That's the goal. So, Rav Ari is not going to tell you to leave yeshiva on Yom Kippur. The davening's too nice. And that's not what he's going to send you out for. But this is a profound, profound message of what's going to, of what our Talmud Torah is supposed to be. It's not easy. A guy gets excited, he's starting to learn, and he has a desire to understand the Gemara, but there are messages behind that are deeper that you're supposed to also be internalizing. Let's talk about in terms of Elul. If you're starting to grow and your emunah is growing, you realize at the end of the day, we are all in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there are many people who want to do tshuva because they know that there are things that they did wrong in the past. But why do they want to do tshuva? Do they do tshuva now because they recognize that there's a borei olam? They recognize there are consequences of their actions. And at the end of the day, they don't want God to zap them. That's why they're doing tshuva. Or is tshuva something else? Tshuva is not about the technical thing of rectifying a mistake, but tshuva is lashuv el Hashem, to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because I want to have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Am I reading just the instruction manual? Or am I understanding the essence of what I'm doing over here? Amir Hashem, we're going to discuss in future weeks that there are so many people who their relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is flat Stanley. It's two-dimensional. You have to do chazar on that book. Remember that story, Flat Stanley? A third dimension. That not only am I trying to rectify mistakes, but I'm here to become holy. I'm here to have a relationship with Kudsha Brichu. I'm here not to just know what is mutter or asr. I'm in yeshiva in my second year, not just to be able to read the Gemara properly, but I'm fully in. I want to be entirely connected to Kudsha Brichu. That is a message that comes out from understanding what Sefer Devarim is about. That is understanding what our role in connecting to Torah Shebaal Peh is about. One more example, and Mitzvah Hashem, we're going to elaborate this in the future. Later on, in Mitzvah Hashem, as the year goes on, we'll discuss the Ramban's holy letter. Ramban is a short letter that appears in the back of many Sidurim. ArtScroll put out a very nice pocket edition of it, and we'll talk about how much I believe that letter could change your life. But there's something in that letter. Ramban says that when you finish learning, ask yourself, how can I apply what I learned? You're zocha to be in yeshiva. You're zocha to spend time and focus on Dvar Hashem. But too many people just look at it. I'm in yeshiva and I'm not in college. I'm able to be reading holy things as opposed to reading secular things. So you spent a day reading holy things. You spent a day talking to your rabbeim. You spent a day working on your skills. What can I take away from it? What is something that I could take away from today that I could take away for the rest of my life? And there's so many beautiful things. Torah is infinite because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite. But that's our avoda. So Chavetz Chaim's harsh story wakes us up to this question. The way Sefer Devarim is built teaches us that you could get lost in the instructions and truly miss the interpretation of what's really going on in a lamp. There's the instructions, and then there is what a lamp is. And then, from learning what Sefer Devarim is about, we now begin to open up our pathways, b'siyata d'shmaya, to be able to think about these two things. Number one, that tshuva is not about fixing it. That's the instruction manual. Instruction manual is fix your mistakes. But the real meaning behind fixing our mistakes is to become transcendental people, is to become holy people. And we need to spend time thinking about how that happens. A. B, in our Talmud Torah, ask yourself, what can I take away? And there's so many different things. And one day it'll be what I got from Mussar said, and the other day there was something fascinating that my Rebbe said in the Iyun Shir that I one day could apply, or that I realized a certain way in which Tosas looked at the world that I never looked at the world. Or there was something that I heard from my Rabbeim when schmoozing with them about what to do this summer. But at the end of the day, Rabbo say, don't walk out of the walls of the Beis Medrash without taking something. Bez Hashem for life. And with that, we should be zoche to ani l'dodi v'dodi li, and to truly foster a deep and meaningful relationship with Kudsha Brichu. It's great to see you back.